There's I've done so little research.
Yeah, very, very little, unfortunately. So Sean, you're leading it. Get ready.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I'm just going to tell you if the wine is delicious or not. So
I
Yeah.
can't spend money. That's my knowledge of Burgundy is how much it costs.
yeah, you're a serious expert in that. I'm like, how does this guy fucking afford to drink what he drinks? Like every time
Don't.
I just want to be your friend. Like you're always posting the most delicious things.
I am a good friend. Hi, Antonello. Good to see you.
Oh, Antonello.
Who's Bruce? Bruce Wall.
Who are the good? Who's everyone's here? Oh, Andrew's here and Martin. I'm just going down the list in alphabetical order. Hello, everyone. Oh, Holly's here, obviously. Paul and Chris. Lovely, everyone. Oh, Stevie's here. Oh, look, everyone's fun. Everyone's here. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Ew.
My friend Scott is here. I'm very excited. He and his lovely partner are pals and make delicious food and are getting into wine. So I'm really excited to have them.
Oh,
nice. Bruce asked, "Why did you ruin Christmas?" And you don't have to answer that.
I won't. I absolutely won't.
Yeah, absolutely.
There may have been a super spreader event. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine.
I mean, there's a super spreader. Like, can't be any judgment.
It's called the hospitality industry. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Welcome to going out to dinner with friends and reaping the. You don't catch it working. You only catch it when you are.
Yeah, and some might say that skipping Christmas with in-laws was a gift, but whatever, it's fine.
Or non-in-laws.
I played a lot of PS5 and I was really happy over Christmas.
Yeah.
Just living my home life. Okay, I digress. Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2022. My name's Nick, if you haven't met me before. This is Wine Coach. New year, new us. Thought I'd do something fun because it's cold and wet and disgusting outside. And so we're tasting some Burgundy, which is always a delight. And in order to, spice things up, I thought I'd pit old Burgundy versus new Burgundy, which isn't reference to vintage, but sort of style and winemaking. And I don't know, it's something that comes up and it's something that like I often think about when asked to buy really established producers and paying a certain price, and then being asked to buy these cult newer producers and also being asked to pay sometimes a little bit more. And I'm like, what am I actually buying and talking about? So I thought I'd gather some cool peeps to talk and taste wine with me. I didn't really think about this, but in theory, there's a battle. It's a debate on the wines. And so, but I haven't really thought more than that, and I probably should because I've got two others to do. But in the corner of New Burgundy, Sean Sidney, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Yes, I'm fair. I'm okay. Yeah. Unemployed.
You're ready to represent the cult producers of that we see and we know and love.
If anybody knows me, it's that I love natural wine, and I'm ready, and no sulfur. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
We don't want sulfur. We don't want filtering. We don't want fining. New oak. Never heard of it. It's just
terroir, baby. Just
wait,
terroir.
I want that new oak.
The oak was made. It just comes off the tree old. Yeah. There's no flavor ever.
No, this is very exciting. I'm very excited to drink delicious Burgundy with this crew.
And I'm in the corner of this very loose debate. In the corner of old Burgundy, Ash Forster. I love seeing you always.
Hey, dude.
Thanks for coming, hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to put white Burg in my glass, I'm gonna be there. So.
when I thought, even though you work at Italy and, surrounded by Italian wine, like when I think of you, I think about our love affair of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
You realize that you've chosen 2 Italian restaurant songs to do
Yes.
this.
And a sake expert to do the job. So yeah, absolutely.
I must say that like the 3 restaurants at Italy, the lists before I took them over versus now, there is a ton more Chardonnay representation.
It's kind of the same with Sean and Julieta, right?
Some people call Timorasso the Chardonnay of Piedmont. So
I mean, I have a ton of that as well. I was like, Timorasso. Oh, yeah, it's it's
Yeah, there's after the wine coach, Sean and Ash will be discussing Italian wine in the modern era in the Toronto and GTA cultural landscape. It's a lecture that they're hosting.
I look forward to 0 attendees.
Yeah, absolutely. And judging this competition, this debate, Mariko, hello. Thanks for coming to being the calm and mature voice of wisdom.
Oh, that's the expectation. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. All right. I'm just here to
Emotions will run high, and you'll have to settle everybody out.
Yes, it'll be very exciting. It's a good thing it's on Zoom because otherwise it might get pretty nasty.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It in decades times we'll look back on YouTube and we'll find this and we'll reminisce about our naivete. I'm sure, but I don't know. We'll just start with tasting some wines and go from there. But like, I guess I think as we discussed, we will have some questions and we'll talk about these wines and go from there and have some fun and maybe we'll change some minds. People who don't even had Burgundy, but who've never had Burgundy, don't know what they're paying for, don't know how much it costs, what these producers are. It's a great chance to learn, and it's going to be lots of fun. But if you have any questions in the chat, throw them. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. Comments, concerns, something funny to say. We love that engagement. But yeah, sit back and relax. You're not on the screen. I can't hear you. I can't see you. Everyone.
Let us stress, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been on so many Zoom calls where it's just everyone's muted and you just see their names and it's cameras off and it's like, you know what? Just pay that extra little bit to not even engage, let people engage. Okay, wine number 1. I don't have any of the bottles in front of me because my team, who I love to death, but cleaned up and threw the bottles away, which I'm not mad about because it's much better than them worrying to not throwing garbage away or recycling garbage. But the first wine we're drinking in the camp of old school, more traditionalist, more established, is the Olivier Leflaive Rui Premier Cru Le Clos 2017. And when I think new school, old school, especially with Burgundy, I'm kind of going into new oak, obviously, and probably filtering and probably finding and keeping it clear, crystal, this classic idea of Chardonnay, the textbook example of Chardonnay. And this kind of delivers on that. It's so delightful. I mean, 2017 is a great year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to throw the first punch, but I just think when you nose them side by side, already the old is just so much more giving in what I want. But I think I haven't maybe swirled number 2.
No, I think
even in the glass, if you've got them side by side, you can see I mean, I'm not that filtering or fining is something, but visually they're very different. And I think that's,
you can just see texturally, obviously there might be a bit more going on number 2, but just on the nose right away, it's so classic. It smells exactly like if I paid for a white Burgundy bottle, and I opened it, I'd be very happy on the nose with this guy.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, like we're obviously the thing that all these share is that they're not, like they're all from either the Côte de Bon, like, more quote unquote obscure. And like the lineup that you put together is so great, Nick, because these wines are not ones that you can get in the LCBO. These are not the Burgundies that people are generally able to buy just off the rack at the LCBO. And that's why this is really exciting. But yeah, like Savigny, obviously, but Morange is another. These are all like from sort of more not obscure, but just lesser known. So I feel like these are kind of the parcels that will really show a winemaking style because they don't have the pressures of like, oh yeah, this is Puligny, this is Chassagne. They can really kind of, and also especially the smaller ones like Chanterev, this is where they can buy land. This is where they can buy parcels. I think this is the first year for this for the parcel of Chanterev, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think that this is their first. They just bought this, I think, a year or two ago, this parcel, and like Morange, Bachelet Monod, they're pretty famous in Morange, but Morange is sort of at the very cusp of the Côte de Beaune before you start getting into the Chalonnais, which is obviously where Rouy and Givry are. So it's nice that we have a cool lineup of things that are a little bit, I feel like stylistically they'll show exactly what the winemakers want us to show, and I think that's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, on the first one you get that lovely generosity and lovely kind of richness. I haven't even tasted any of these wines yet. I haven't put any of them in my mouth, but you just get that lovely kind of richness and intensity right off.
It's not a wine smelling, Sean. This is a wine tasting.
Sorry.
Get it in your gob and tell me what you think.
This is my first time.
Yeah, I mean, just smelling both of them right off the hop, it's like, number one, it gives you that like unctuous kind of luxurious thing that like it smells like what you paid for kind of thing. You know what I mean? It kind of smells like money, like in the best way. And then it's like, two, I know that I've had their wines and I know that it's going to give me what I want. I just think it needs some serious like swirling or something. Because
obviously the name the name Laflave, I think he's obviously related to the domain Laflave people, and I know that he actually took over some of their, like some of them reverted to him in the last couple of years, because I remember that was like a big deal. So obviously this is as classic gets, and I think he's actually dialed down the oak as of late in the last like 5 or 6 years. I remember old Olivier Laflave wines were really like kind of on the verge of being a little bit monstrous and kind of round and a little bit too intense, and then I think he's really kind of tried to. And I think that's, and ironically enough, I think that's the influence of maybe not places like Chanterev, but of that kind of new style that's searching for freshness, that's searching for a little bit more, just a little bit more drinkability, a little bit less of that oak. And
when we talk about like, well, for those who don't know, like Burgundies and the winemakers of Burgundy, like the Laflave name is like iconic, especially in Puligny-Montrachet. Like it is like royalty, right? So, and this kind of, as much as Olivier's kind of like trying to forge his own path, you don't put the name Laflave on your wine label if you're not trying to like, reference it. You've got to also pay homage. You're also trapped by that to like pay homage to it. And I mean, Mariko, I would love your input on this. Like, Sean made a good point about like these outlying villages or these lesser villages. And, I think back, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, Savigny-le-Bon, Rouy, you would kind of turn your nose up at it because they weren't like, you didn't get the, the Grand Cru villages or things like that. But, do you find with the producers that you represent, like they're just as invested in these smaller villages or lesser known villages than they are in their like famous ones? It's you don't have to be worried that like you're getting a lesser wine. I think if anything, these are more approachable in their youth than some of the older stuff. But I don't know what's your impression?
Yeah, I mean that there's a lot there, like what you just said. But I feel like yeah, there's so many producers in the in-between places, like whether it's like Santa Mirage, which won't taste, or even like Mercury, where we get producers putting even more energy sometimes because they have to like prove themselves even more, maybe. I know like Bruno Lorenzen and Mercury, for example, like he's got a lot of energy invested into like proving others why Mercury is something that should be taken seriously. So like in a sense, you might even have more to say because you're in an outlier. It's like, oh, we don't have the Grand Cru parcels. We're not that. So you kind of work that much harder. It's like the kid that's a little like, I don't know, not at the top of the class in the beginning tries a little harder maybe. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about these like, yeah, non Instagram like hyped up wines necessarily. Although like I think we'll get to this, but like some of these wines, like especially Chanterelles, is pretty Instagrammable. Like you're gonna get points and likes if you post.
I wish you had the bottles, Nick, so we could do the Olivier Leflaive label versus the Chanterev label, because that would just say it all.
Yeah.
Rico's point, I'm sure I've Instagrammed both of these bottles or both of these producers in my time, knowing how like the likes and the engagement that I will get. So yeah, both are pretty iconic.
And that like coolness factor of not being blue-blooded, like you kind of like get to do what you want. There's this like rebel kind of like energy to that,
Yeah.
As punk as $100 bottle of Chardonnay can be. Yeah.
You know what? There are Instagrammers and there are people we know and we love who like revel in posting all like photos of old bottles. You know what? I only want to post current release. I only want 2020. I want some 2020, 2021s on my feed. I'm happy to drink these wines young. I think that's the way to go. It's pandemic. You got to live in the moment. I'm not selling. I do sell a wine, but like not this. Sometimes you just need this in your glass to like bring some sunshine. It is sunshine in a glass.
But it is funny, like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Marika.
Okay, I do like Ashley's point about it smells like money. Like, it smells like this like royal. There we go. I'm having trouble with pronunciation. Say royalness. Like, you buy white Burgundy, and this is kind of like Leflaive is what you're expecting, I guess, in a sense. Whereas number 2 is like a beautiful wine, and you don't necessarily need to be like, this is white Burgundy. Yeah.
I think it's that's the exact point. Is like, I think number 1, he did go out on his own a bit, but he still did put that name on the label. And I think he's a little handcuffed to what is expected. And I think there is this freedom to these like new Burgundian producers that allow them to produce things that are a little bit more unexpected, that give a new generation that, don't have the money to buy those more traditional producers, and introduce a new style of Burgundy to them, which I think is exciting and is fun. And they have the freedom to kind of move around and do things that, you put something in the glass that you're like, is that Burgundy? What's going on here? You know what I mean? Like it's a fun time, I think. And
I think that's the sort of big, if you wanted to maybe sum up the old and new sort of styles, or at least what they're trying to achieve in one word or one concept, I think like transparency is a huge one. So they're trying to sort of like get rid of all the, because if we talk about terroir, right, Burgundy, so the concept of terroir for people who don't know is that like all these little vineyards are all supposed to taste different and all supposed to express different things. And that's sort of like the golden rule and the golden goal of Burgundy is to express these sites. And so I think that the new school or the new generation of winemakers are really just trying to remove as much sort of, if you want to call it makeup, if you want to call it sort of artifice, like artificial, because there is a sort of interesting thing, like all the barrels that Burgundy producers use all come from central France. The forests come from central France. So is that terroir? Is there like the Francois Frere or whatever barrel maker, is that terroir? Like why is it okay to use barrels from central France in your Burgundy wine, on your premier cru, and why is that accepted as terroir? So I think that the main difference that I find between the red and whites of these anyway are sort of like the newer school. So the Bachelet Monod and the Chanterev are very kind of transparent and pure and try to avoid, and there are debates as to what that means, and whether, like we said, if you open the Chanterev bottle and you're expecting oak and richness and intensity and you don't get that, are you going to be disappointed? I don't know. It depends on what you're looking for. And I think these producers are kind of trying to change the paradigm and the expectation of what you do get when you open a bottle of Burgundy.
It's a really good question that you pose. Like both Laflave, and we're going to taste the Chanterevs next, but like both of these are very valid winemakers. They're making very valid wine. Like no one's disagreeing that Chanterevs isn't real Burgundy, even though it kind of is, done with a lower intervention style. But why are they both like, why, apart from being like what makes these two special when you remove winemaking from the equation? And that's a really interesting question because, Burgundy is renowned for being special because of the soil and the terroir and the landscape. So when you have both of like, it would be really cool to have like the same vineyard, the same vintage from two different opposite ends of the winemaking spectrum and say, well, what makes both of these wines special that they both share? That Burgundy from, Victoria or a Burgundy from Niagara doesn't have it. I'm curious just to see as this like the conversation at large sort of grows to ask these questions, because I mean it's Burgundy.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what Sean says, like I mean, I agree. Like Chanterevs, I love, and you're, the only thing that kind of irks me just about kind of more, I don't know, hipster style, but not that they're in that group, but like the word transparency sometimes is used as like a piece of armor for these newer producers when, I don't think older, more traditional producers aren't being transparent. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's being used against them, even though they're not being transparent. They're telling us how they're being made. So I think sometimes that term gets used against them when it shouldn't be. I don't know. I think it's, I don't know. I don't know if that resonates. But
your point, I mean, I've asked Mariko as someone who's been to Burgundy and visited lots of like some wineries, classic wineries, they're not hiding anything, are they? Ramonet isn't like, there's not a big curtain in the cellar where he puts all his magic, like
the Wizard of Oz. Yeah,
they're still they're winemakers at the core, right? They're all working really hard and they're not trying to like fool or, I mean, deceive people.
I definitely think that term can apply to, some big boy Cali producers, or, not to point ugly fingers, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think Laflave is trying to hide behind anything or hide what they're doing.
You guys are not romantic. I meant transparency as in the transparency of the wines themselves. I mean, metaphors are wasted.
Like a silken gauze over the wine.
Yes, no, the purity of the wine itself. No, I mean, but it's like, I know that the Domaine Laflave, they occasionally fine and filter their wines, which is like fining and filtering has become such a sort of boogeyman and negative. There's negative associations with fining and filtering because I'll a haiku perhaps.
Yeah.
And like I think that there are valid ways to make wine, and people talk about terroir, which is totally valid. I believe in the concept of terroir, but winemaking is just as important.
Yeah.
And to pretend otherwise, I think, is wrong. And you're not. There are different ways, and if you know your site, and if you've been working with it for years or decades, you're going to know, hopefully, the best way to get at least what you want to express out of that site. And so I think it would be really interesting in however many years, especially with Olivier Laflave, who just took over some Domaine Laflave vineyards, to try to compare them in a few years and see if there's been any changes. That would be a lot of fun. So that's the next one, Nick, right? You're gonna grab some
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah. the La Flavoff.
Yeah,
Awesome.
La Flavorama.
Tickets
Let's
start
talk
at
about
$850.
let's talk about wine number 2 because
Yes,
I mean let's taste it. So Sean, on a scale of 1 to 10, as a young and up and coming somm, how cool is Chanterelles? Is it at a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say this is like an 8.75.
8.7. Okay, what's 9 then?
Because I mean, yeah. So for people who don't know about Chanterev, it's a husband and wife team. Tomoko, I believe her name is. So she worked at Domaine Simon Bees or Harvest there and met Guillaume, her husband and winemaking partner. And I think just either this year or last year, Guillaume finally left Simon Bees because they can now focus entirely on Chanterev. But they started buying other people's grapes. So they were a micro negociant, which are people who buy other people's grapes, and started making wine basically on the side, so to speak. He still worked at Simon Bees. And then recently they've bought vineyards and now I think they're both working full time on their project. They have enough. Hi, bud. That's my coworker. But yeah, so I mean, they're very cool. They're hard. I mean, they're highly allocated. Their production is very small. They're hard to get. They're hard to find. But yeah, I mean, but they're interesting because to me, their wines are definitely sort of transparency focused in the romantic sense of like purity. They don't use a lot of new oak. I know that. They don't fine or filter. But at the same time, I actually have this at Julieta, the restaurant I work at, a few of these, and I know that these have been open and in the pouch, but to me, these show very kind of some sort of modern classic, like reductive aromas. So to me, this is not like I don't think this is like incredibly out of the realm of what we consider white Burgundy, to me anyway. I can think of producers that are more sort of intensely sort of against the grain, but to me this still smells like white Burgundy. I don't know if people agree with that.
Yeah, it does smell like white Burgundy, but I also like noting how like the notes that people are getting from this in the chat aren't notes classic to white Burgundy. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely not going to postury and saying, hey, this Chardonnay tastes like green pepper. I mean, that would be PYCM going to his winery and saying so I'm interested. I think that's a really cool element that people are identifying it's kind of opened up a little, and maybe it is the reductiveness, but it has a bit more complexity, I think.
There's definitely a different.
I don't know whether that's in a good or a bad way, or but it.
No, I think what I think the biggest thing is, even though what we are doing is comparing, old, new, or whatever. I think the fun thing about these new, more modern producers is that they're changing, or they're doing a bit of a paradigm shift or a mental shift for us of what white Burgundy should and can taste like, or it kind of opens up that realm to us. It's no, it can also taste like this and still be amazing, and it can give you X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C. It can give you all these different things and still be really, really incredible wine and still show the terroir, but just in a bit of a different way. And so I think it's I think they're just opening up the gamut to just no, the universe is actually this big, as opposed to we thought it was like this.
Yeah, it was well defined before, too rigidly probably, where it was this is where you're allowed to play, and outside of that is not. This wine, in comparison, is definitely, I get this rawness. It's more there's more fruit, this transparency that Sean was talking about. Yeah, this very short distance between the grape, the juice, and what we're drinking. There's less in the middle, is distance, I feel like.
I love
Bruce,
that.
I think Bruce is right. This wine is intensely reductive, and even more so when it's opened, which is a winemaking style. So reduction, there's a lot of science behind it, but obviously it just means that there's not a lot of oxygen in the winemaking process, which leads to.
But to that point, like this wine has been open probably, I mean, albeit in a pouch, been open for 5-6 days. Like it stops. There's a point where it has to stop being reductive and start being a part of the character of the wine. Like it's not going away. Like I understand that it's a like sometimes described as more temporary but like I don't like, you know, is it, you can't say, oh, you know, give it a week open. Like, you know, I mean, ironically, we talk about like Giberto and we're like, you know, it tastes really good in a week once the reduction blows off. It's like, but that's not a reasonable expectation for anyone to drink that wine, is to go, oh, I'm opening some wine
next week,
next Wednesday. You know, like it's a ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
But there's some reductive winemaking that doesn't go away. Like, and even like in the past, whatever it is, 20 years, 15, 20 years, the sort of reductive style, the Pierre-Yves Colmaret style, the Cocherie style, Rouleau, like they're kind of baked in. And so when we think of white Burgundy, like I think it's changed even in the past 15, 20 years, because those producers are, you know, the most maybe sought after as far as new style. They're now looking, you know, they're getting the hundreds of dollars, and Chanterelles are of course way behind that. But I think that people who have been drinking those wines are inspired and may make these wines in a slightly different way. So obviously this has little to no new oak. It's probably mostly old barrels. And it's interesting.
The one difference sort of I found in the winemaking is that like the Laflave is like is pressed and immediately the juices immediately like off the skins, whereas the Chanterelles has like a 6-hour pressing cycle, so there's probably a little bit more skin contact and a little bit more texture coming out, and I can kind of get that.
I think it definitely comes through for sure.
And it's not skin contact wine. We're not going to orange, but we're going to like a textural element.
Yeah. And then you have the like non-binding, non-filtering to add to that. And it's just like, and then you look at it and it's such a different visual expression as well.
I mean, I would be very, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because I've had some Chanterelles, but I don't remember it being like this intensely reductive.
This one, this cuvee is like I said, when I opened it, it was like we also have their regular Bourgogne Blanc, a few bottles of that. It is much less like this. So I think that, I don't know whether it's just because this was their first year making wine, because you can have reduction.
Amateurs.
Yeah, I know. You can have reduction in terroir as well. There are soils that are more sort of that lean towards reduction. I mean, I will say this about Chanterelles. I'm going to say a mean thing. Are you guys ready?
No.
I love the wines. I know. Wait. I'm supposed to be on this side. Anyway, so last year I had one of their reds, the Ladois, the Bricot, and I think that they try to make their wines. They consciously try to make their wines in a style. So that red was. So 2018 was a really, really hot year in Burgundy. All the reds, a lot of them are quite high in alcohol or quite round and rich. And this one was almost like green, so kind of underripe. It felt a little bit watery. I was a little bit disappointed because I loved their whites. So I think that they do try to make wines in a sort of conscious philosophy, and sometimes that can work, sometimes it doesn't work. They're trying things that are not probably, you know, they could make wines in a classic way. They, you know, I think there is a learning curve, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's like if this is their first year with this terroir, I don't know if this is the wine they wanted to make or if they're still kind of getting a handle on it, but it's still exciting for them to try, and it's certainly not a cheap experiment, and it's exciting if nothing else. But all this to say, this wine is, to me, is quite reductive. It definitely shows a lot of that kind of intense, smoky, flinty kind of character. The fruit seems to be a little bit obscured. But at the same time, I am curious to see whether with some time in bottle, it will chill out. because it was, and even when opened, it was very, very this character intense.
Nick, this is the 19, right?
Correct. 19, current release.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Gotta get my charger.
Oh.
Didn't plug his computer in. This is
Amateur.
indicative of new Burgundy. Amateur hour.
Yeah, I've got somebody doing on a little tandem bike over there. We only use
Yeah,
natural
your
power
low
sources.
intervention.
That's right.
Sorry, no swearing on the Zoom.
That's right.
Rico, I mean, I'm curious as like after the first two wines, like, do you have a preference to not to like, you know, make a judgment, but like,
Yeah.
like, was there something that kind of just like hits you like viscerally and like just you delight in it without like, I don't know, immediately? For me, it's like wine number one is like just a comfort zone for me. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I might have been a little biased by like even using different glassware, but yeah, that wine number one for me is like, yeah, this is Burgundy. This is what I come to, why I'm going to open this bottle, right? And it's like, I think we touched on it earlier too, but even as like the classic expression, this is not like classic, you know, like it's not the wines from the decades ago, you know, the new generation, even if they're not like they freshly taken over the winery, they're still changing the way they do things. So for sure, if there's like a generation shift of someone new taking over, that is reflected often, I think. But even with the same people, they can't ignore the new like winemaking, the new like, you know, grape growing conditions as well. That's happening all over the world. So wine number one is like I would say this is a weak spot for me because it has the oak. It's pretty. It's a little more like I don't know what regal, you know.
Money.
Yeah, smells like money is. I really like that actually. It's like smells like crisp euros. Yeah. Which are worth more than $1, you know. So
I love that's such a good note for wine. A crisp euro. That down. Tuck that down.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because I don't know. I also, as much as like the thing is, it's like as much as the flavor was delightful, I'd probably find it much easier to sell the Chantres rather than the Laflave. And that's a big part. Like, I think that's another part of it. It is more sellable. And like, at the end of the day, that's kind of our job. I mean, we all deal with the business of wine, not the academics and the, you know, we're not Instagrammers yet, but I mean, they're in it for the money as well. So I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. We'll find out. We've still got 2 other wines to drink. I know what I liked, but I also the appeal. Like I also like number 2, but like side by side, you know, how classic, the classic kind of definition of Burgundy kind of like won out for me. And I don't know, maybe the reds will be different. And I actually am pretty confident the reds will be completely different. But Carrie asks, what makes wine number 2 more sellable? You know,
I mean, it's got a great story.
It's an amazing story, right? You know, and
didn't she work at Kuhn or where did she work? Yeah, which is
Germany,
like yeah.
And so and like obviously a female winemaker and someone who's like, you know, not even French, which is a huge thing. It's a huge thing in Burgundy. Is if you're not French, then I mean, you know, I've heard stories of how like more difficult it is, and so, but also like the other element is that like, you know, people come in asking for these wines and they're on Instagram and they're being seen and the cool people are drinking them, and like, you know, there are wines that I would pour for winemakers and there are wines that I would pour for, you know, the people who cool somms and the cool wine people. And like, I think wine number one is a wine for like winemakers who like really want just, appreciate good winemaking. Chantrevs is for like the people who want really cool and hip wines that are really prominent in the talk of the cult producers, and Chantrevs is definitely one of them. I don't know what I'm going on about, but
No, you also you're cheering for them. You're hoping you're nobody's going to take the side of Laflave as like it's like, oh yeah, I really need to show my support for the Laflave.
Underdogs that are like that we want to support.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an adorable story, and like you definitely want to root for them. And I think they both have their place in time. Like, I don't know, wine too is such, I don't know, wine one is like, what you're getting, you drink it, it's gorgeous, amazing. You don't have to think about it. You've had whatever kind of day, your 800th shutdown, and you just need to drink some really expensive good Berg. But then wine too, like it's a conversation, it's a thought process. It takes time. Like they both have their place, and yeah, you want to root for that adorable young couple that's trying to make it in a really tough area to make wine.
And no autographs.
This is my thought. It kind of like there is a similarity between like sake producers, where if you talk about like high polished sakes like Daiginjos, they are elegant and like refined, but then that same producer might make a more lower polished sake like a Honjozo or some kind of like, easy drinking. And it's about that there's a different occasion for these wines. They taste different, these sakes taste differently, and they're not about like one is better than the other. It's just there is different occasions for these wines. And I think they both exist in very different cultural moments.
Yeah.
May I ask a question of the, oh, sorry, Mariko, go ahead.
Different audience is going to say, oh, texturally too, like, good sake reference. And then also for these wines, I think the texture between these two wines is quite different. Like how like rich and kind of voluptuous, I guess, the second wine is. There's more like, it to me, kind of tastes more like grape than the first one. The second wine is like, yeah, it's fruit. And then number one has a little more like humanness, which is literally the, definition of what we're doing tonight. But like, there's more humanness in the first wine than the second wine, is what it feels like to me.
I was just going to ask everybody, both panelists and folks. So both of these would probably be the same price on a wine list, right? Like about somewhere between $150 and $200.
Yeah, I think so.
If you were served both, I think number one, you could be happy with it. You're saying, oh yeah, like I'm getting my $150 worth. It's Burgundy. If you got served number two after not caring about like the story about whatever, you just want some nice white Burgundy. I mean, would you be disappointed? Would you be 100%. Interested? Would you be?
I'd be livid. I'd be so fucking mad.
I'm just curious. I'm just generally curious.
Because it's a like for me, I'm not strong in Burgundy, and I wouldn't like a cool somm could come up to me and like tell me about this really cool Burgundy new producer giving me like a really cool story, and there's a good chance that, well, not a good chance that there is a chance that I will assume that I've never heard of this producer because I just don't know enough about Burgundy. And then I would get this in my glass and I would be like, this tastes like fucking muscadet. Like a bat, like I'd be fucking livid. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It wouldn't be like I wouldn't
so mad.
Yeah.
And to the point of like drinking this at a restaurant, I mean, like Nick said, it's been open for how many days? So you pull that cork and pour it, like.
Cool. It was intense. It was intense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be very, like, as a somm on the floor, I would be very nervous, and I would never open the number two for anyone I wasn't 1000% sure would be open to it, because the
people who want it would love it. That's
but
the
it's
thing,
a
right?
conversation 100.
Oh yeah.
100%. But
So-
that's the whole point of being a sommelier on the floor, is like having those conversations. Like when do you open a bottle for someone that you're selling a bottle to? Like, unless they just blind order, you know, you have those conversations and you find out what they want and you see if they're open to something. They would really need to be open if they're sitting at the same price point. You know,
But I would encourage people who don't love this wine to, if you can find them, they're difficult to find, to check out just the Bourgogne Blanc, because I think it is very different. And I've opened that for guests and they love it and I love it. This is a little bit of a different beast.
this one
And I
really
mean,
shocked me how
yeah,
different
I mean,
it was to the Bourgogne Blanc.
I have a pretty classical palate. I think everybody who knows me knows that. Like I'm
Yeah.
not, I've got an open mind, but I know what I love. And but I do love their wines. I do.
I think
that
this one in particular is very.
But what about with food? Like if you were drinking it with food, I think these two would be like opposites. No, they would pair with very different contexts and food, and yeah. And would send the wine back apparently and ask for a new song. But I love that comment. But yeah,
But
like
I would also
compare-
say that, like, I would say no, why not? Like, I think that the La Flave has in my mind a much more narrow food options to pair
Yeah.
with, whereas I think wine number 2 is a bit more versatile.
Mhm.
You know, do I want? I mean, I like wine with everything, so I'm not going to create an example, but
I like.
I mean,
wine
it's going to be
with-
interesting. I like food with my wine,
Yeah.
not wine with my food.
I'm supposed to be on the
Um,
side of Chanterev, right? So I love Chanterev.
Yes, you love Chanterev. Yes. You're a natty cat. Okay, wine number 3. We're in the reds. Francois
Red wine.
Lamp, Ivry Rouge. I don't know why I put Rouge there, but Premier Cru, La Brûlée. I mean, there's 2 things to know about these wines. They're going to look very different, and I think that's a regionality thing, not necessarily a new versus old thing. I think wine number 1 is clearly much darker, and I think that's a bit more about the region, and that Givry and you know the Chalonnais, Macanais. I forget.
Chalonnais. Come on.
Chalonnais.
Tends to have a little bit more ripeness, a little bit more higher extraction, and whereas the Morange from Bachelet Monod, not wine number 4, is a little trying to be a little bit more Côte d'Or, Côte de Beaune, you know, that kind of style. So, but let's taste wine number 3, 2018, Francois Lamp. I love Francois Lamp is like a really delightful wine. Kind of only focused in Givry, which is a small little village in the south of Burgundy, and I think that was one of the things that I kind of why I fell in love with this producer, is that he really tries to explore this village, and when you taste some of these red wines from different vineyards side by side, you kind of get this really great picture painted about this village and like why this small little region still has a lot of complexity and a lot of layers and depths and styles that can come out. But I think it's super neat.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm supposed to be on the other side, but I love the lump wines. Like, I think they're great great wine list wines. They're usually kind of very generous, very giving. Really, like, I don't know who's mad about lump wines, because they're affordable, they're delicious, they're very Burgundian in style. They don't veer off into any kind of one direction to me. But they're sort of firmly rooted in tradition, which I think is great. Like,
I wish I had the bottle, because it has more power
Yeah.
to this wine than I thought I was going to get.
I don't know if anyone gets this or if this is super weird, but like you can kind of taste like the denseness of it. I don't know, like it. You look at the glass and it looks thick. You can taste that. It's really interesting and cool. This is the first time I've had this producer, so I was really excited. And
I think it's vintage too, a little bit.
Yeah.
Big year.
Fair. I'm not one of those somms that like is constantly chasing the red Burgundy unicorn. I kind of just was like, screw you, I'm white all the way. But this I'm not mad about. Like it.
This is kind of the more Liberale is kind of in this northern part of Givry, which is kind of considered like the more like prestigious region where they balance minerality with fruit. And I think as you go south into Givry, you get a little bit more fruit, and you can go a bit higher and a bit northern and you get a bit more minerality. And I think Liberale is the name of the vineyard, and this just kind of sits right in the middle of that kind of region, and it's right next to some of the most famous ones. But you know, there is this like irony, bloody kind of vibe to it, and
Like
you know, we talk about like the soil content, but like you also, you know, note that like Beaujolais is really close. You know, the Northern Rhone is really close, and like culturally, these wines, especially in Givry, were sent down, like traditionally, historically, a lot of the wine was sent down into like south into, you know, the Rhone, and there may be some, you know, historical kind of like relevance to that, and like that they were trying to make wines that are a bit more powerful and like more similar to Rhone wines rather than like to find the finer wines of you know, the Cotonui or whatever. I don't know.
It had a lot of shiitake notes, like dried mushroom. Like when you get a bag of that and put your head in, it's like not fresh mushrooms, but definitely the
savoriness is like it's
What do we think about oak use? What do we think about in terms of new oak? Like I was looking up this wine, and it, you know, it can be very hard to get any Burgundy producer to make an actual website that's actually relevant because they don't need to.
Yeah.
So some said 30% new oak, some said 70, and I was just very curious because new oak is like one of my weak points in my like how I taste. I don't really get oak very well. I'm curious to all what you think about like the oak use on this.
I don't know. Like it's
because that defined like that was a big part of the white wines, right? Like oak versus new oak, very important in terms of talking about those different styles. And I wonder whether, when tasting about the two reds, whether oak is going to be as important sort of factor as it was in the whites.
I mean, I skipped ahead and took a sip of number 4, and I think I'm so thirsty, Nick. Just leave me. I mean, I think oak, because they both do have a bit of new oak, you know, percentage is debatable. I think the bigger conversation is the carbonic, because I think that's the real differentiating moment here.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. I just smelled the fourth one.
Yeah, you have to skip ahead and then you'll know the answers. But I think that's the defining line for me at least. Like it's such a, I don't know.
Yeah, and like that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, go.
I think that the fruit, like the sort of fruit density of number 3 of the lump wine can handle the oak. Like I always find these wines exceptionally well integrated, kind of off the top. It does depend bottle to bottle, but I think that new oak can really vary. There are some wines that it really sticks out, and some wines that, whether it's because the fruit has enough depth to kind of carry it, or you know, there are a whole host of other reasons. I think it's well integrated for being such a young wine, and I think it's, you know, it's pretty plush. So I don't think that the oak, it probably gives it a little bit of weight as well. It's probably adding to that sense of weight. But I don't think that it sticks out on really either of the wines, but especially not on number 3. It still seems kind of silky.
Yeah.
And integrated with those savory notes. It doesn't seem so super spicy.
Yeah, I think the savory notes is like the key to 3. It's so intensely savory. It's so beautiful. Like, yeah, again, I'm not a huge red Burgundy, but this one's really like, I'm impressed. Good job, Nick.
Talking about the ABV, and I have to look it up, but I will look it up as when someone starts ranting about something. I'll slip away to Google.
Time.
Oh yeah, this is my time.
Go.
But sorry, go. So Ash brought up whole like carbonic, and that sort of ties into this idea of whole cluster where you're adding. Oh, there you go. Rob, Miller's got it in front of him. Great.
In with the answer.
Yeah, 14. Yeah, that absolutely is right, exactly right.
Vintage, yeah.
But you talk about whole cluster. We talk about carbonic and whole cluster, and I think that is a big definition. So, you know, what we're talking about here is whether you pick the individual grapes off the stems and off the whatever that's called. The grape, what language is gone, but like, or you leave the whole like bunch, the grape bunch with the stems and the branches together during fermentation, and how that imparts flavor. So I think that is a very big character, and I think that that is a big, I don't know, I'm curious as to what my my friends say that, but like, is there a conversation about, like, is there a new Burgundy producer that doesn't use whole cluster? Like, is whole cluster like what we talk, like, is that the cool thing? Is that the culty thing to do in Burgundy now? I think so.
I think so,
like,
yeah. Yeah. I find myself, like the Chanterev wine, the red, to me showed an intense, because also it was also 2018, and this wine is 14%, and I think that wine was like 12.8 or something. And to me, it can be difficult with those producers, because I think at some point, especially in the era of climate change, you kind of have to take what the vintages give you. And there are a lot of new viticultural techniques that are, you know, being developed to try to make fresh and vibrant wines in the age of, you know, intense heat and water stress and all these things. And stems can help. They can reduce the alcohol a little bit. But yeah, I find myself quite sensitive to excessively stemmy wines, and it is something that I find a lot of in new red Burgundy producers. I don't find this one particularly stemmy, though. I don't know if it's 100% whole cluster or if it's.
I think it's 30%. Yeah, I think that's where they kind of.
I mean, but you know,
30% whole cluster.
DRC is, you know, they use a lot of stems, and there's a lot of.
Jacques, very classically, like famously known for using not even touching the grapes, just like shoveling, picking them and throwing them into the vat. So stemmy. Just the whole vine goes in. They're just like, no, let's just throw it all in.
And again,
Marika,
for me,
what are
like,
your thoughts?
Yeah, Marika.
No, sorry. Yeah, like, is that a conversation you have with, like, about whole cluster when you talk, like, when we talk Burgundy? Is that something that, I don't know, what do you look for in a Burgundy? Like, you know, you're a new producer, you're finding a new producer for your wine, you know, for That's Life, your wine agency, and like, that be some, I don't know. I'm just curious as to like what people's
opinion. It'll come up in conversation most likely, but it's not something that's like I seek out. I mean, I'll probably ask it or they'll offer it, but probably all the producers that I love and like we work with would their answer would be like, well, it depends on the vintage, it depends on how ripe our stems are, you know, it depends on that year really. And I'm surprised this 18 is like quite balanced. Like 18 is not my favorite vintage for sure, and this is really quite pretty and elegant. It's all like really balanced, but yeah, I mean, there's so many, as we touched on, like so many techniques and methods, you know, like you go to one producer who says, oh yeah, this is the newest pruning technique. It's like really cool, and this winemaker's like 31, and then you go to the next door neighbor and they're like, yeah, we don't do that. Like, that's just not, that's not what we do. You know, it's like, it's trendy. So I think it's like anything else, it's like trends and fashion and where you are obviously, and the vintage. Yeah, it's fascinating, but probably my like kind of favorite expressions are people who are more traditional maybe, but they're integrating like they're choosing what makes sense for their wines and like what will heighten their wine, you know, like the Minarlo, for example, you know, his parents' generation's wines were like big. They're like really big and needed like 20 years. But now like you drink them young, because I do like young wines. I'm like the opposite of Sam, where I want that like freshness and bright. Although like mind you, I also don't drink like Vancouver wines. You know, he buys. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it.
But I love like the freshness and the crunchiness of these younger wines. Again, like we've said, especially with global warming and like, you know, all sorts of things happening in the world. Yeah.
It will be very interesting to see, because we don't have a generation yet, of whether these new styles of wines will age and whether they're kind of built to age. And because obviously aged Burgundy is like the holy grail, both white and red. Like those are the wines that people who love Burgundy chase. And I mean, I love aged Burgundy. It's hard to get unless you're keeping it yourself, and it's outrageously expensive. And I am curious to see whether, because I think that there are a lot of conscious decisions being made to try to make wines more immediate, whether that's just because that's what people yeah, exactly, that's what people want, or you know, and whether these wines kind of stand up will be interesting. I mean, I think these wines are all kind of delicious, or kind of made for, you know, maybe the first one, the Le Flave could sit for a while if you wanted some of that more honeyed character, some of that more nutty thing. But to me, especially number 2 and number 4 are probably more immediate. Like the purity of number 4 seems to be kind of the point. You get this really kind of high toned, beautiful, pretty red fruit. That seems to be sort of the goal of this. It's not at all stern. It's really silky. There's not that heavy tannic, like drying character to it. And just depends on what you want. And frankly, like young Soms like myself and youngish, yeah, right. But you know, like our experience with white Burgundy or aged Burgundy is low generally. I think that's a pretty, you know, some people are lucky, some people are, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's really hard. And so, the wines,
and even more on a professional level, like you don't taste it, you don't sell it, you don't buy it, like
absolutely. None of us are buying wine to cellar for our restaurants and for for people. So I'm not trying to buy wines that are mouth-dryingly tannic in red Burgundy or totally closed. I'm trying to buy wines like this that are open and beautiful and food friendly. And I think that the newer generation of winemakers are probably, not always, but are generally looking for a little bit more immediacy. And I think that our like winemaking technique has allowed that. And it just depends on whether you like that or not, and whether that's something you value.
I mean, that has to be a part of these like winemakers' conversations, like the ageability of their wine, like how approachable this wine. Like I would be really mad if winemakers aren't talking about that, to say, oh, no one's aging my wines anymore. Like, you know, they're influenced by that fact and pushing themselves to make wines that are a little bit more approachable. And I would absolutely think that, like, I would appreciate, I would like gravitate towards winemakers who do that and who make wines that are approachable in their youth, because reality is that, like, if we're not doing it, then I can't imagine, like, you know, the people we talk to wine about, like the people who buy our wines and buy wines from us, who we want to like guide in the right direction. Like, you can't. I mean, I'm clearly on the record saying I hate telling people that they have to buy wine from my shop and then age it for 5 years. Like, I think,
it's a tough conversation.
Yeah, and it's not a fun thing to say to anyone. And like, reality is that I think these winemakers, this is a reflection of that. Like, it's super interesting. But I also think wine 4 and wine 2, there's this certain element to like if it's textural or I don't know, there's something about it that they share. Like it slightly crunchy, slightly broader in like in their flavor profile, a little bit more, maybe a little bit more like ambiguous, so that they kind of go with food a bit more versatile. I think
There's
is
a
maybe
bigger range, like it's less narrow, with food. Yeah. But the wine number 4 almost had like a soda pop kind of thing, which I feel like it's blown off quite a bit now, because at first, like the carbonic that we were talking about earlier was just like it was super but then the acidity came back with the vintage and the winemaking, hopefully. So but it was really juicy, like almost fake juicy at the beginning. Now
there's kind of a cherry cola thing.
Yeah.
Vibe.
Yeah.
It's funny, like wine 3 has this like fruits kind of vibe, and then for me wine 4 just has this like really savory kind of like tart, like unripe kind of vibe going as well. I don't know whether, I think that's pretty much something to do with like the whole cluster element, but like it's quite a savory wine. We don't often taste a more north, like classical Burgundy to like a more like riper, richer Burgundy, but tasting them side by side, I'm definitely getting like, I understand why people want to drink wine number 3. It's delightful.
And it is also quite supple, like again, tannic. There's almost not an intense tannic kind of.
Steve said, like I'm drinking cherry cola while I have coffee breath. Yeah, I'm not mad at that. I think that's a really strong note describing new oak on wine. And if that's what you're getting, then that's pretty good, because sometimes you're tasting, vanilla frosting on a cinnamon cookie, and like that's not fun for anyone. So I think cherry cola and coffee are 2 good descriptors of new oak on wine.
But it's funny because whole cluster is becoming, like you said, this huge thing. But I think, I don't know, I'm not gonna make too huge generalizations, but I really like the I hate it. No. I think that I think some winemaking can get a little political in a sense of like, we use whole cluster because that's what we do, and like that's what
Totally.
and there are, like, one of my favorite producers is Michel Lafarge in Volnay. Beautiful purity of fruit, incredible, like ageable wines for sure, and 100% destemmed, like super like very like, no, you'll never find a stem there. And I'm curious, like, I don't know if it's a fashion thing. I don't know if it's a contrary thing to use stems. I don't know if a destemmer is expensive. Just kidding. Just kidding. No. No, if you're buying land,
So why
if you're
can't
making,
you afford a destemmer? That's what you ask these.
yeah. Why are you poor?
Why? It's not that they've chosen this. It's just they just assume. I just assume you can't afford a destemmer.
It's expensive. Because there are a lot of whole cluster wines that are quite structured, that are quite intense. This is a pretty immediate, sort of fresh, beautiful like version, but there are a lot of whole cluster wines that are just as structured and just as intense, and don't have the sort of carbonic, like grapey influence. So it'll be interesting to see these wines 10 years down the road, if any of us are planning to cellar them for that long, how they'll kind of hold up.
And then literally no chance that any of these wines will last for 10 years in a cellar for me. It talked, you touched on a point that like we use a lot in Burgundy, and it's this idea of a pendulum, that like the pendulum is swinging, and it's good imagery, but not useful, because no one tells you where on the pendulum anything is. It's just that, everything is just on the pendulum, that like, you go from super new oak to super no oak to super, whole cluster, and then destem, and everything's just, it just swings back and forth. And it's just one of those things that upon reflection really is a frustrating thing to say. And if anyone hears me talking about a fucking pendulum, tell me to shut up, because it doesn't mean
I think
anything.
you're telling me to shut up, but it's okay.
No. But like I say it all the time. You know, White Burgundy's going on this pendulum, and you know that, like, you know, we're seeing this change and this influence of new winemakers, and then you see that and other regions have an influence on something else, and we all talk about how like it just like goes back and forth, and it's like, okay, great, but like how does that help anybody? Like, you know, I think I have no point other than this rant, but I think, you know, there's a spectrum and people choose to be on this spectrum, and sometimes they choose to use more new oak or destem more because it's a family tradition and they're the 15th generation winemaker from their family, and deciding to change the very like flavor of their wine is an impossible barrier to go through. And then some people, you know, go to Copenhagen for summer and they taste, you know, every summer, and they taste these amazing wines that are, you know, full of VA and mouse taint, and they come back and they're like, this is me, this is what I love. Like, I don't think there's this group think where like these winemakers are just like moving, or as a group moving with the times. I think you just have to like ask these questions and say, what influences your winemaking? And because some of these wines you'll really love and some of these wines you won't like. And I think that's one of the points of holding these kinds of sessions, is help you, if you want to spend money in Burgundy and you have a really great experience, find the ones that you really enjoy drinking. You know, because both of these wines are pretty much priced the same, and same with the Chantrevs and the Laflave. Like, they're the same price point, and you'll pay a lot for fancy new age Burgundy as much as you'll pay for old school Burgundy. So like, figure out what you like, and you know.
And I think that it's just exciting. It's exciting regardless. Like, I think it's also like a huge risk for somebody like Chantrev. You know, these, like, I don't know what they paid for this parcel of 70, but it probably wasn't cheap. But they're willing to take these chances and sort of expand. Like Ash said,
more expensive as you know, Toronto land prices. Am I right? Like,
that's right. Toronto real estate.
Yeah, Toronto real estate has nothing on Burgundy. You know, so
changing the paradigm of what white Burgundy is, and that, you know, everybody has, like you said, their preferences, and I don't think that anybody's losing by having more interesting voices and more people who are willing to be experimental with their wines. I think that that's really exciting and really interesting, because again, like 25 years ago, it was all like big lees stirring, you know, rich wines, all these things. And I mean, I think there is a stylistic shift happening in amongst at least like the more sort of approachable, quote unquote, producers. Like I still consider both of these to be pretty approachable. So you know, I think that the younger winemakers are drinking more diverse wines maybe than the generation before, so they're sort of exposed to the possibilities more, which is, and then taking it back with them to Burgundy. Like I think a lot of these people are interning or going to work elsewhere and coming back, and then rather than just staying, which is really, you know, it's a more diverse and more interesting kind of crew of young winemakers who are willing to take the lessons that they've learned elsewhere and bring them to Burgundy, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, you're taking this, as Mirka said, like, you're taking this very small traditional place that's known for XYZ, and now it's becoming this other thing. And I think tonight, like, it's a good eye opener of, it can be so much more. And you know, if you want to sit down and have a bottle with your sound friend or your wine friend or, you know, whatever, and really chat and go, oh shit, like I didn't know that Burgundy was doing this. I didn't know that they were this Nouveau. Or, if you've been shut down for the fourth time and want to cry in the bathtub with no lights on, maybe have number one. I don't know, whatever. But I think it's exciting that out of such a traditional space and what we all think of Burgundy, all these new things are coming out, and these really bold new producers are trying to do something cool and new that, I'm sure they're getting a lot of slack from their neighbors. So I don't know. I think tonight was amazing. I think it was cool to see all this diversity.
It's okay. They're going to get $75 a bottle anyway. So who cares?
Absolutely. So my opinion for whites was like Laflave. I wanted old school. I wanted rich opulence. You own everything. But for the reds, I think I prefer wine number 4. I feel like the Bachelor Minot really, like, if I was paying, I'm pretty much paying the same price. If someone poured me that, I'd be pretty happy with that as a Burgundy option. I'd be like, yeah, this is delightful. But I'm curious as to, like, I don't know, other people's opinions in terms of reds. Was it about the wine or was it about the style? I don't know. John?
I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna say something.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. I think 4 is like a little. I'm gonna sound like a prick regardless. Like facile. I'm just not like, it's easy and I like it and it's delicious. But to me, like, I don't know. I drink. There are Burgundies that I drink for just like pure pleasure and whatever. But to me, this maybe lacks a little bit of the sort of depth that I'm looking for in Burgundy. And if for me, I could probably get this style of wine and this immediate sort of thing for less from elsewhere, like really just beautiful Beaujolais or other a new
You make a very good point.
New special, like all the like new Spanish wines that are using Grenache in really interesting ways, etc.
Even like a
Don't go crazy. Let's not bring Grenache into this conversation.
You're right. Only real wine. Anyway. But but at the same time, like the lump. Yeah, I think I prefer the lump wine only because I think what I look for in Burgundy is kind of a specific and classical kind of thing, which is my own prejudice and my own expectations of Burgundy. So I fully admit that comes into play when I'm talking about these wines.
That's a good context.
America, go.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. That was really it kind of brought me back into if we're comparing prices, not comparing prices, but if we're putting prices back into the conversation, like the wine number 4, there's other comparables, right? Like we could get other things that kind of fill the spot. But for me, I agree with you, Nick, that it was like more pleasurable. And for me, the number 1 and number 4 were the most like pleasurable wines. But it depends on like what I'm looking for in that moment. You can find pleasure in many things. So
Fire away. What are your thoughts on the reds? Like, what is your preference? Where did you sort of fall in?
Me?
Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, like I kind of side with Sean in the fact that like I've tasted that in a few different producers and a few different bottles at a more approachable price point, I think, and not to say it wasn't delicious. Like Mariko, for sure, pleasure, bam, right there. 3 was just surprising. I didn't anticipate such a savoriness and such like a mild. I don't know. Like it every sip kind of impressed me and surprised me. I wanted to go back for more to understand it better. I don't know. I'd never had him, and if this is my first introduction to him, I'm like, oh shit, where can I buy more? Like I'm intrigued. I'm impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the most interesting, it's like talk about savoriness. One of the most kind of interesting things I ever heard it was a Burgundian winemaker on a podcast. And I don't remember which Burgundian winemaker it was, but he said fruit is easy to get anywhere. You can get fruit anywhere. You can make wine and get fruit, but it's the other things. It's the savoriness, the earthiness, the complexity. That's what makes Burgundy Burgundy, and that's what makes great wine great wine. Because like you can, there are fruity Pinot Noirs you can get anywhere, pretty much. But I think that the savoriness and the sort of the complexity and the textural and other components are that's what sets us apart. Burgundy specifically to me is that savoriness, that extra layer of depth that it goes beyond fruit. And that obviously those are the things that when you age Burgundy, those are the things that start coming to the forefront. And those are important to me when I drink Burgundy. That's what I'm looking for. That's a specific thing in mind. So that's why I thought that Ashley's comment was actually kind of spot on.
Oh shit. All I take from that is that old Burgundy won this shit. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Rico, what are your kind of final thoughts? Like, I mean, technically both of us judge the winner, so like it's not all on you, but like I'm kind of
You're split.
I hate
Yeah.
that.
This is the white flag. This is the white flag that I'm waving.
Yeah.
I hate that I'm saying that. But I don't know.
No, be
Zero.
split. We
Yeah.
love
Like for me, like, and I'm not saying this just to like be annoying, but like for me, the whites, like when we talk about Chardonnay, like new, like redefining Burgundy is like just creating a more neutral Chardonnay and like white Burgundy. And like, I don't need that. Like I want a little bit of oak. This is where I want oak in my white wines. And I want a bit of that beautiful richness that old Burgundy can give to Chardonnay that I don't think other regions are like, always trying to emulate. But when I talk about the reds, like I'm looking for crunchiness. I'm looking for like, I don't know. I want that kind of like, I want approachability in my red Burgundy. I'm tired of being told that I can't drink red Burgundy anymore. And if this is their definition of approachability, then I'm all for it. And like lump is classic, and like I get it. But like, I think it might be a little easier to make to add richness in Givry than it could be maybe perhaps to add it in Mirage. I think.
Oh, that's fair. That's a good comment.
Yeah.
Rico, what are your thoughts? Weigh in on this.
Yeah, you guys are the judge.
Controversial debate.
Yeah, I still stand by the fact that I definitely like number one, the flav for the whites more. It's what I'm expecting, or not expecting, but it's what I'm like looking for, right? That's what I'm seeking. But what yeah, definitely. Without like any, yes, it's the crispy gyros that does it for me. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Red is a little harder, like I think everyone's Ash and Sean's thoughts about how like my number 3, you're it's more cerebral, maybe you're thinking about it more. Not cerebral, like it's not easy to drink because it's delicious, but it makes you like think about what's going on and like the progression. But not my number 4 had this, like pleasure, ease of like drinking. I didn't like it at first for sure. Like that crazy candied like cola fruit note was like little much, and then it mellowed out. So yeah, and again, like if you're eating, we're drinking just on its own now, so it's a little different. If you're eating food, like the lump would be so delicious with that Sean at Julietta, you have that like pasta dish with the mushrooms.
Whoa, sponsored content. Content.
I will take a
Look at that Italian restaurant that has that pasta dish. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
with the mushrooms. like that I think would be like fantastic. Whereas the bechamel would be like for a different pairing, you know, like something that has more fruit and like bright.
Also with tomato sauce, huh?
Yes, exactly. Like, yeah, you have pizzas apparently as well. So yeah, like I think in the right context, the right moment, they're all delicious, obviously. But if I had to choose, it'd be wine number 1 and probably still wine number 4. Yeah, right now at least.
So we've got
Okay, so we all we give everyone gets $100 to spend on one bottle of wine of the 4 that we've tasted. Ash, what are you choosing?
Oh, number 1.
Number 1, Sean.
I actually
get
bought
one bottle of wine. You get 1 bottle of wine from the 4 that we tasted. What are you buying?
I would probably take number 3 if I had to. Yeah, and then I'll put it away for 10 years, and then I'll talk to you then.
Yep. I didn't say you had to open it. I didn't say you have to drink it. You're right. Absolutely. Mariko?
Yeah, I go with the lump as well. Yeah.
I'm going with 1. I want that La Flave all the way.
Yeah, we do.
Wow.
Chardonnay, buddy.
Boom.
Oh.
You know, I thought I was a Sacha and Montrachet person, and now maybe I'm Pullini Montrachet. Maybe this is me going to the dark side.
See?
And I
Yeah.
think we just need to open more Chardonnay and find out more where else we can go, what else we can love. I think we need a Chardonnay off. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Should we? Yeah, we could do. Oh my God, we could do that. But I don't know. I'm curious, everyone. I mean, obviously, there was never. I mean, this one was the one that I don't think there was ever going to be a really clear answer, and I it was a balance of like, can you talk about Burgundy and get a definitive answer, or do you put a wine coach session because it's Burgundy and it will sell? So that's where I decided that. But I think, I think this is it. Burgundy is notoriously divisive, confusing, causes a lot of people lots of anxiety. So I don't think we are, I don't think we are wrong in being a bit like not having a clear opinion about what we like and what's better and new or old. But, in terms of how to help you buy something or how to help you choose your next bottle of Burgundy to buy, ask yourself why you're buying it, and are you buying it to drink? Are you buying it as a gift to seller? I don't know. And I think that will help. And ask 1,000 questions when you buy it. Like, you shouldn't be buying Burgundy without being able to ask questions as like, oh, is this a more newer style? What's their oak use? Don't rely on an app all the time. Feel free to like ask somebody. I think it's literally the most basic requirement of like being a merchant, selling something, is being able to talk about the thing that you are trying to sell. Sean, what about wine 3 makes you store it for 10 years?
I mean, so the savory kind of component that Ashley mentioned and that I really look for in red Burgundy, that's because I would want that savory, because the fruit is quite forward on it. It's quite, you get lots of that kind of like dark red kind of fruit. And for me, if I could put that away for 10 years and then have it, try it again, you'd probably get much more of that savory component, which is what I look for in Burgundy and aged red Burgundy for me. I mean, it's hard because I love really good Bourgogne Rouge too, which is meant to be drunk relatively soon. I think that's and frankly, it's some of the only Burgundy I could afford at the moment, and regrettably.
Way to bring the mood down, Sean.
Yeah, sorry everybody.
I'll just drink
Boo.
But thanks everyone for joining us. We've been, it's been 90 minutes, but
yeah, sorry.
Thanks. I wasn't really sure. I wasn't really sure how this whole session would turn out. And I'm glad, you know, we didn't start talking about like where Burgundy is and what it looks like and who makes it. I don't know. Like, I think we talked about comparing the wines, and I think that was the point. Next week we have dry versus off-dry Mosel, which is as nerdy as it sounds, is more controversial than you think. Ash, as someone who is notorious hater of Riesling.
Hey, don't share my secret shame.
Wow.
Back off.
But I would say we have Kieran Coyne, we have Kim Pollock and Krista Oben. Like, you can agree, regardless of the wine that they're tasting, these are three really cool people who are gonna like really break it down. And who's excited to taste some dry Mosel?
Imagine having to be on the side of dry Riesling. Imagine if that was your task.
That would be the worst.
Brutal.
It would be the worst. It'd be like proclaiming that Barbera was better than Nebbiolo as an expression of a true Piedmont grape. But that's a wine coach for another day. Absolutely.
Scott asked, Nick, did you see Scott asked if they're all available at Peter Pan?
Yes.
Yes and no. None of these, I mean, we have wines from the same producers, but I was really running low. I think the wine number one, we have another wine of another Laflave wine, but we do not have any more of this wine. Wine number two, we've got a few bottles of the Sauvignon Le Bon, but not like maybe two. But then we have again some other wines of theirs. Wine number three, that's the lump. Yeah, I've got a bit of lump hanging about. Super delightful. Wine number four.
I've got the 19 lump of that, the La Brûlée, which I bought from you. In 10 years, everybody's invited to a tasting.
Yeah, okay. Can we promise to meet back in? I'm going to put a notification in my Google calendar. 10 years,
for 10 years from now.
We're going to do this.
Yeah.
And Sean's going to provide the 2019 version of this wine, while we'll drink 20. I assume like 2029. Like in 10 years' time, I think wine will be direct. It'll be nouveau. Like it's
going to be in a bag.
Style.
It'll just be
like harvest, ferment, out the door, into the glass within 3 months. I think
Burgundy Nouveau. Nouveau.
We joke, but it could be true. But Mariko, thanks for hanging out. I know it's Sean, your husband's birthday today, so I appreciate you hanging out with us.
Yeah,
he's fine. He's a morning person, so he's probably in bed by now, I guess.
Thank you for arranging this, Nick. This is really great, and it's so rare
Sean,
to drink.
As always, thank you for bringing the Paul Simon and explaining everything about Burgundy, because I did not have any and I did not want to be the person that ended up explaining what Burgundy. And Ash, as always, oh my god, it's so nice to think it was almost a year ago that we did our Scotch tasting together. Like
we should do another one. I miss.
Yeah, we should do another Scotch one. That was like that was wine coach number 3, and I think this is wine coach number 37 or something.
Long live wine coach.
You are OG wine coach.
I'm blessed to be.
We should do Scotch again. Just like get drunk and not care about anything specific about the beverage.
So like every other night? No? What?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Let's just. Okay, we'll do it. February we'll do Scotch coach. Scotch coach. I think everyone's coming. I assume so.
Who wouldn't want to do it? I don't know.
It's just where we all drink one bottle of Scotch. We're not tasting 4.
Soon we'll do wine coach in person at Peter Pantry. That is good. That's our resolution for 2022.
That is our resolution. But everyone, have a lovely evening. If you're interested, come hang out with us next week for Riesling Wine Coach. I think it's going to be. I don't know. I'm really biased. I despise dry Mosel. So Krista, thankfully, as the judge, she is so much more level-headed and more balanced than I will be. So thankfully she'll play the part really well. But those wines are going to be so good. Oh, you should chase them. And then, but have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your, beautiful winter wonderland of Toronto as we experience. And yeah, hang out. And if you have any questions, you've got my email. Everyone, just reach out. I'm happy to help, and drink more Burgundy.
Drink more Burgundy.
We have Chantereau Bourgogne Blanc at Julietta not on the list for
I'm
the real ones.
right now.
I'm just saying.
Force mute.
Bye, guys. Thank you.